Call the meeting back to order, please. I have 8 cards here for people that want to speak on one of the areas of Oroville. We're not going to break them down. We're just going to take them as they come. If you're here, you'd like to speak. We'd like to keep the comments down to about 4 minutes. I'm going to set the timer, and maybe we can get through this today. So Mark Adams is number 1.
Thank you, and good afternoon again. I'm here to address Study Area 24, the Stringtown Mountain. When this planning process started, got into it, there was 3 alternatives proposed for, wasn't exactly the study area that's shown here now, the original proposal. It was a much smaller study area, and actually there was a couple of them that were there. And we requested that they be combined into more of kind of a master plan for the area, because one of the major property owners in the area, Bob Taylor, really has a much bigger vision for the property than was projected in that original study area. The 3 alternatives for Study Area 24 that were originally proposed after we asked things to kind of get combined, still didn't fit what we thought was the real vision that Bob Taylor had for the area. And for those of you who've been around a while, it goes back to 1994 with the original Stringtown Mountain specific plan that was approved by the Board of Supervisors. So we proposed an alternative 4 to try and capture the vision that we thought Bob had for the property. And that's really as a resort development that's has the potential to be a real asset, not just to this area, but to the entire county and entire region. And on March 28th, I think there's a letter, it should be in your packet. I have it under page 355 that describes that alternative 4. And the CAC, when they reviewed this study area, unanimously approved the alternative 4. Craig Sanders talked a few minutes ago about the city of Oroville's perspective on this. He mentioned like 3,500 housing units, and in the alternative 4 that was proposed that housing density is no greater than an overall density of 1 unit per acre, and there's 2,700 acres or so in the study area. So the 3,500 is not what we're asking for. And beyond that, it's a different type of housing. It's not just your standard tract residential housing. It's housing that would support and complement the resort development. You've got a huge natural asset there at Lake Oroville. You've got visitorship approaching 1 million people per year. You've got just a huge potential there, and the housing would complement that resort development. And if you look back at the Stringtown Mountain specific plan that was approved, it approved housing, but it was going to be housing that would be rental type housing for visitors and tourists. And we just see this as a real asset to the county because of the occupancy taxes, the people that will be coming and spending their money visiting the lake and visiting the region. You'd hope to see a golf course developed on this property. And really what, when I look at all of the study areas that you folks have been reviewing and will be reviewing, this is truly one of the very few that really meets all of your guiding principles that you established. 12 or 13 guiding principles. And if, go back to those and look at them, and I think we can, I'd be happy to sit right here as long as you want me to and tell you how, we meet every one of those principles, but this study area truly does. And it's an economic benefit to the county, and it's a good project, and I just ask you to support the alternative 4 that the CAC supported. Absolutely not. There's nothing. There's been some clearing done up there of some brush in the wintertime for fire hazard stuff. I'm working with a couple of the major property owners now. In early July, we're hoping to get a meeting together with several of the other major property owners to start a planning effort that we see as a couple-year process. We'll be engaging county staff in this, but you would be seeing some sort of plan development or specific plan with an EIR, basically, that would address all the constraints. No. You know, some of the study area that goes down to the intersection there where there's some commercial development now, and there's some commercial zoning, and so there's a potential that, you know, in the next couple of years a project could come in, a commercial project, and just, you know, request under existing zoning and approval. But I would envision that that would kind of follow after some the traffic analysis that needs to be done. We don't see the traffic quite the way the city does, because we hope to capture traffic in what Bob's vision for Lake Oroville Village, a community center there, and keep it from going over the hill. You've got the Berry Creek area with thousands of residents up there. This is their first stop for shopping, and so you know, there's a potential there. There's the other route out Miners Ranch to Ophir Road, out to Highway 70. We see as a secondary or maybe even the primary access to this, especially for resort development where you have people coming out of the Sacramento area or the Bay Area to visit. That would be the primary route likely into this location. So there's a lot to it, and we just need to, you know, we spend the time now to really analyze this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Next person we have here is Chris Hawk.
Good afternoon, members of the Commission. My name is Chris Hawk. I'm the managing member of Oro Bay Associates, LLC. I'm here to talk to you about Area 25. I was before this committee the day after, on the 9th, the day after the May 8th approval of our specific plan by the City of Oroville. I wanted to, I have submitted also correspondence to this commission on a letter that was dated May 13th, and hopefully you've had an opportunity to review that letter as well as the handout that I provided at the last meeting. With respect to the correspondence, I outlined for you, for your consideration, the reasons that we felt it important to include a specific plan designation for Area 25. Oro Bay, the project Oro Bay consists of 2,400 units. There's a description that talks about the open space, the parklands, the school facilities. Is the first truly master plan community in the city of Oroville. It has had extensive planning. We have been in the planning stages on this project for over 3 years, which culminated in the approval, as I said, on May 8th by the City Council, and the certification of an EIR, full EIR for the project that took over 1.5 years to complete. Again, it has been thoroughly studied and vetted through the community process. There are several important reasons for this Planning Commission to consider the specific plan designation for Oro Bay. One, it is consistent with the guiding principles that were outlined for the CIC, in keeping it consistent with the planning efforts of the city. So we'd like to see that guiding principle maintained for this specific project. There was an extensive amount of conversation at the City Council hearing with regard to this project in terms of its smart growth aspects. It's located very close to the Oroville Airport, which is a future planned business center and commercial center for the city of Oroville. We are just down the street from that project and from the airport. Public infrastructure, to go to Commissioner Nelson's previous question, public infrastructure is virtually to the site. We're several hundred feet away from existing infrastructure. Again, we are in the sphere of influence of the city with infrastructure almost to our back door. And then additionally and finally, the catalyst for the future annexation of Thermalito, which again was a question that was raised earlier here, we view Oro Bay, and the city views Oro Bay as a catalyst for the opportunity to explore the annexations of the Thermalito areas, because we are going to be providing significant infrastructure in terms of traffic, sewer, water, and police and fire services to that area. So I respectfully request that you consider the recommendation for specific plan designation of this particular area consistent with the city's findings.
Thank you. Any questions? Cindy Mills.
I'm nervous. Hi, my name's Cindy Mills, and I lost all my paper here. I'm concerned about Area 23, and I have a Harvest Hill farm. It's a pumpkin farm. I don't know if very many people are aware of it, but I'm on the Sierra Oro Farm Trail, which has brought in people from all over California as for ag tourism. And I have had so much positive energy from people in our area that would like to start farming. There are people that already have started farming, but they are not ready to yet produce their product. And I do not want to see homes being slipped in between, closing us in, taking away our farmland for ranchers. I have people that have cattle beside me, sheep, and the people love it when they come up to visit and they see this, and it gives them something from their town that we have to offer. And I just don't want to see us shrinking. I don't know what else to say. I'm nervous. This is the first time I've ever talked.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Now, and I guess I should ask staff, is hers in the city? So, I mean, this is the other alternative, the alternative plan, the preferred alternative to us. Is that what she's speaking against now? Do you know, Joanna?
I assume so. The preferred alternative in this area.
A whole series of people that have, like you,
Yeah.
in the city, right? That have been talking about the winery, the whole winery,
Yeah.
the series of.
We have quite a few things that are happening along our roads, along Mount Ida and in a few other areas. And I've always had this here map, and it's always said Oroville, Wyandotte, Fruitlands. And I think it should always stay this way. I mean, this is the way it should be. So, anything else you guys would like me to add? So, I just hope it doesn't get tighter. I come from LA, and I just don't want it here. Thank you.
Here, Cindy. G.E. Checky.
Good afternoon. I'm Jean Checky, one of the owners of Gray Fox Vineyards in Oroville. And as I expressed before, our concern is with the designation and protection of the unique farmlands in Area 23. We're also part of that growing group of Sierra Oro Farm Trail Passport Weekend, which is still in its infancy. It's in its third year now, and it is growing, and it's very popular with the public. And to designate existing ag lands in Area 23 for other uses rather than agricultural uses will have a negative impact. An agricultural designation will protect the ag land potential and allow this agritourism a chance to grow. As Cindy said, there are people that we see all the time that express an interest in maybe putting in some vines on a small parcel, like 5 acres, 3 acres, or a berry farm, which Cindy mentioned to me some neighbors were talking about. And that's another thing that what makes that area unique is that you can have small farms, small acreage that families can live on and grow things and provide food and other things to the community and education to the public because they have agricultural water, ditch water coming to them. And they're in the foothills. A lot of them cannot get sewer water. So I think that's what they mean when they're saying a unique area, that you can have these small clusters of unique farms. And what brings them together is this farm trail that we've got in all these places on a map. And if you went through that area, there's a lot of places that aren't on the map yet. However, we are trying. There is a lot of room to have more people on that map. What it does is it really makes Oroville a destination instead of just a place to pass through. We'd like to see the committee respect the designation of ag land and protect the adjoining areas to the ag land with a rural residential designation, which would be compatible with ag use. As you know, you need a minimal amount of space for farm operations and to be able to be neighborly with the farm operations that you have to do. And it's my opinion that this agritourism has already been successful and will really bring an economic growth to many areas of the county. And I think it's a project that's worth protecting and enhancing, and it does help make Oroville a destination, and will bring a lot of economic opportunity to the county. Thank you.
How big are the parcels in this area you're talking about, approximately?
Well, my parcel, we have about 15 acres. We currently have 7 or 8 actually planted, and that's plenty of for what we need to do for our operation.
About the same size? I mean, are they in the 5 to 15 acre category?
A lot of them are, yes.
Are they, what is that, AR now?
AR. Mm-hmm. The thing that makes them viable, though, is a lot of them are on that ditch water, which really is a help. Yep. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Next person is Tej Man.
I have some, I'm a landowner in Area 26. I've owned it for a while and submitted a tract map application in 2004. And I was always promised that the land designation would stay the same. And I just learned just a few minutes ago that it's been downgraded from medium high to medium density. According to the Butte County General Plan, it would have had allowed up to 14 units to an acre. Now it'll only allow up to 3 to 6 units to an acre. And I haven't been able to come to all the meetings. I live out of town. I'm in Yuba City. And being an elected official there, a lot of the time I have meetings the same times that the meetings that you have here. So I haven't been able to make it to all the meetings. But to my surprise, I noticed my land had been downgraded, and I would like to keep the same that I had before. That's all. Thank you.
Where is your property located?
It's right above Ophir, right just a few acres west of Lower Wyandotte, a few blocks east of Lincoln Road, south end of Autry Lane. It doesn't really, there's no roads. It's all that land that myself and my neighbors, it goes from Lincoln to Lower Wyandotte, from Ophir to Monte Vista. There's a subdivision, I think it's Wilcox School. There's a few streets there, but the rest is open. And a lot of my neighbors had industrial zones, or they had one general plan and different zone. But I always had the higher density zoning and higher density general plan, and now I seem to have it lower than the rest. I think my neighbor's been showing up to all the meetings, and I haven't. So.
What is your proposal? Your zone?
Leave my zonings the same.
No, I know it was high density. Now is it medium density?
It was medium high, and now it's low medium. I would just like to keep it medium high, which would be same to either side of me as proposed. So.
Any other questions, Mr. Mann? Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Bishop.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Bishop. I'm from the East Oroville area foothills. I'm here to address the agricultural lands of Study Area 23. As you're well aware, we've already had some input about that, quite a number of letters and several presenters about the fact that there are agricultural lands which had been previously overlooked in the process, unfortunately. And in fact, there are long-established, viable and economically important farmlands within that area. It certainly merits agricultural protection. So that's just briefly acknowledging the background. But my immediate point here, and this is really in response to a question raised by Commissioner Nelson when we presented our comments last time, and that was explicitly what is your view that is the appropriate treatment for this. And the appropriate land use appropriate land use designation for these is agricultural, just as would apply to classic valley farmlands, even though some sub-designations might recognize the viability of smaller acreages in the croplands of this particular nature. Agricultural residential is not adequate. There are conditions in which that really becomes essentially residential and there's no agricultural left in it. Designation as agricultural will best protect and enhance the agricultural potential of those areas by these three things. One, of course, is retaining minimum parcel sizes that are conducive to agricultural production. Another one relates to the agricultural supply of irrigation water. Agricultural designation and that official recognition of those lands means that people in the area are going to be in a much more powerful position in dealing with the water delivery agencies to have them maintain and retain the capacity to deliver irrigation water. And finally, those who are landowners in that area will, by the nature of the land, be more inclined to accept and support and continue the agricultural productivity. So the overlying zoning should be set to minimum parcel sizes of something of order a few acres in order to retain the viability of even small-scale operations. And that question was raised earlier. There are viable operations on several acres up to perhaps a dozen acres, very few more than that. And so that is kind of the order of magnitude of viable agricultural operations within those areas. The surrounding areas should be compatible with agriculture, and appropriate land use in those surrounding areas is rural residential, as recommended for that overall area by the Citizen Advisory Committee. And here I'm just going to display what is far too small a map for you to see, but I want to make the point that in your materials, and it was an attachment to the April 17th errata, are maps that do show the unique farmland, the farmlands of statewide importance, and the grazing lands within that area. And basically, they fall within that blank-looking southeastern portion of Area 23, which came out of the CAC recommendation as rural residential. But what we would urge that you do is look explicitly at what now are expressed and delineated on those alternative maps as agricultural, and let those agricultural lands be deemed just that, because that's the appropriate designation. And then they would be within a broader area of rural residential, which is a very appropriate surrounding land use. So we would respectfully request the Planning Commission recommend, number one, that the unique farmland, the farmland of statewide importance, and the grazing land be designated just what they are, agricultural, and that they remain embedded in the rural residential lands suggested by the Citizen Advisory Committee. That's a simple refinement, bringing those lands to visibility within the current proposed land use. And that whatever form the final land use and accompanying zoning take, that it meets the goals outlined above and ensures that these valuable agricultural lands are, and I quote now from the guideline number 8 for the general plan, protected, maintained, promoted, and enhanced. And in doing so, the one comment I meant to make when I held up the map is that does not significantly reduce in any way the number of available parcels. It simply acknowledges quite properly the agricultural use, and in doing that supports the viability and enhancement of that ag use in those 3 points that I outlined. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today. Thank you.
That's the new timer.
That's the timer?
Thank you, Jim. Any questions of him this time?
No, you raised some good discussion questions for later that we'll get to.
Scott Perkins. You're on timer, too.
This is, I just saw this. It's in here.
Hello again. I'm Scott Perkins, a resident of Orrville. My company is also the PLM Group, which is a consulting company. I'd also like to tell you off the bat that I represent Mastelada Ranches, the Moss Family Trust, and of course my family and our interests here in town. I'm looking at my list of stuff here to figure out what to cut out to make it brief, because I have lots of general comments. One of the things that came up from some of the folks from Paradise is there is an effort right now with the wastewater working group that environmental health is leading up regarding engineered systems and things of that nature, which will add to the future opportunity of some of the areas that don't currently have public systems available for wastewater. There's lots of effort right now, it seems, from some of the other commenters that we would like a lot more detail, and I think you folks have certainly done a great job in trying to look at it from a more broader perspective, because that level of detail is going to be caught during the CEQA process, during some of the constraints analysis and all that stuff. So I'd like to commend you on that, that kind of keeping this in with the 10,000-foot look at some of these study areas. I wanted to comment quickly regarding downzoning, because there was some comments from Joanna, some comments from Tim, and some of my concerns, and lots of people that I talk to and people that I represent are definitely concerned about the opportunity to downzoning, and I'd like to commend Commissioner Marin that downzoning is definitely an issue. We're certainly going to face that as it comes up. There's going to be lots of discussion. Let's just say that. But economically, it's a big factor to the county. There's a tax-based effort, but there's also, I think, something that needs to be considered as litigation. I think that's probably going to be inevitable. But any amount of litigation that we can fend off by having an accurate general plan, and I'll get into a couple specific comments regarding some projects that I represent. It needs to be factored into the economic puzzle of this general plan. Downzoning is certainly going to bring a fair number of lawsuits, I think, and there's debate on whether they would stand up in court or not, and that's for a future time. But it's just something to be considered. Let's get right into study area 23. Some of my neighbors here, I own property in study area 23, and the folks that I mentioned that I represent have property in study area 23. I think the main point is, and it kind of gets back to the downzoning effort, is we currently have ag residential designation in our study area, and myself and my family and the people that I represent, as well as other people, I believe, want to keep that. And I think there's maybe just some miscommunication. We would like to keep our ag residential zoning for study area 23 where it's applied currently in the general plan, and the Citizens Advisory Committee confirmed that. Alternative number one is as close as it is to the existing general plan. It's most consistent with the city's preferred alternative, and it's just good land use. We would like to, the farm trails is very important. It's a very important economic piece to our vitality over here in town, and it's going to have a lot of future, and we would like to keep that ag residential designation, with the caveat of a couple of something that I've been pushing and that we've been successful in getting people to realize is very viable, is this commercial mixed-use corridor on Miners Ranch Road. You folks have confirmed that at a previous meeting, and just in general discussion. The Citizens Advisory Committee was not unanimous, but it was 75% of the vote, and I don't have the exact numbers, that all agreed that that's a very economically viable corridor. Now, the city of Orrville doesn't agree. They have traffic concerns, which we completely disagree with, and we're in consensus with the Stringtown folks. That's not a viable argument. It has been the effort, and if you go back to some of the documents in Alternative Series 1, 2, and 3, for that matter, regarding regional traffic planning, we have always seen that the bypass around Orrville is going to be Ophir Road, Lower Wyandotte, Foothill, and further up Miners Ranch Road. That bypass will make areas along that corridor economically viable, and that's what we propose. We don't want to see mass urban development over on the east side of town. What we do want is to take advantage of what we think is inevitable, and that's a bypass around Orrville. We don't believe any of our proposals, Stringtown included, as well as commercial along Miners Ranch Road, which is really just an extension of what's existing there at the intersection of Highway 1 and 62 and Miners Ranch at Kelly Ridge. It's just an extension of that south. We see that as obviously being economically viable, but not impacting traffic patterns such that it would require the city to improve and Caltrans to improve the highway and Olive Highway and Oro Dam beyond what they're already, the issues that they are already facing. I mean, it'd be great to have 4 lanes right now. It's not going to happen. They have plans to improve that, doing different traffic patterns and delineation and striping and so on and so forth, and hopefully that'll help the problem in the short term, and we hope to help the problem in the long term by having a bypass around town. So real quick, to get to the map that you have in front of you, you'll see that this is an exhibit cut right out of Butte County's general plan update and the settings and trends. On the map, you can see this was the exhibit that I put together to have the discussion with the Citizens Advisory Committee regarding the expansion of the east side of Study Area 23. Originally, it was the east side was designated at Miners Ranch Road as an eastern boundary. The board unanimously agreed to expand that to the east so that we could analyze that area under this during this general plan process to see if it was viable. We think it is, and we'll certainly be trying to prove that in future meetings. So you can see that over there on the east side of the map, which would be the right side, the right side of the map. So that kind of just gives you a flavor for what the Citizens Advisory Committee was looking at when they approved that, and the board also approved that. If you look down towards, there's the green area at the south end. You can see I have some things delineated there. There's a project called the Versies Place project, which is Oral Banger Partners. I represent those folks. It's a pending project. I know this is all regurgitation from the last meeting. You folks heard that. You can see that we have that and the Moss property, which the Moss Family Trust I represent. Those properties are currently zoned R1. And it gets right back to the economic situation regarding legality and litigation. The Versies Place project is probably going to happen long before the general plan is approved. So we'll simply have a non-conforming use, which isn't the end of the world, but why have that if we already know the project's in the queue and ready to come before this commission, hopefully sometime real soon. But more important, as importantly, but somewhat more importantly, because it's not a pending project, is the Moss property. It's 35 acres that fronts on Lower Wyandotte Road. It's butted up to existing urban development, which is R1 to the nature of probably around 5 to 6 units to the acre type of development that dates back to the 70s and early and mid 60s. But also across the street is the new school. Zoning that or designating it as resource conservation doesn't make a lot of sense economically. It's a perfect property for development just by the nature of its location. But as importantly, it doesn't have the constraints that would warrant it being designated resource conservation.
Could we wind it on up, Scott?
You bet.
You're not
I would just like to propose that we confirm the Citizens Advisory recommendation regarding Study Area 23, which is basically a modified alternative one with mixed-use expansion along Miners Ranch Road, keeping our zoning and everything the same as AR. But if you folks could please take into consideration my comments regarding the Moss property and the Versies Place property, we'd like to see that as maintained as R1 designation. The balance of that green area is really the old Robinson family area, which the reservation currently owns. And that is really what we would like to see, is just a slight modification at this time to what the Citizens Advisory Committee has already approved. Thank you for your time.
One question. The balance of that property is mostly old mine tailings, isn't it?
Like you have no idea. We've had, as a matter of fact, current comments from the county regarding the Versies Place project. It is further clarification to a Phase 1 and a Phase 2 environmental analysis that's already been done that dates back almost a couple of years. There's more reason than not to not have it as resource conservation. Mine tailings, potential hazardous substances, which we're analyzing on that project specifically. If anybody knows that area, I certainly do, because I grew up around in that area. I've ridden motorcycles all over that. There's definitely not resource conservation in that area. It's not very attractive land at this time.
Thank you. Scott? Roger Cutler.
Good afternoon. I'm Roger Cutler from Berry Creek, representing the Berry Creek Community Association, Study Area 8. And in consideration of the clock, I won't try people's patience by reiterating what you already have had made available to you in writing. I simply wanted to acknowledge that I am present, and if you have questions, I would be happy to respond. If you have a reason why you can't support the community's alternative 4, I would like to hear them. And other than that, I will take my seat.
Roger.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone that feels like they've been left out here? Okay, then we will close the public portion and let the Planning Commission review the Citizens Advisory Committees, alternative land uses, and all that.
Great. Let me get all my papers in order here. Okay. Hey.
I can also.
Our first study area is the Berry Creek study area. It's in study area 8. And I have a different piece of paper that I need for this. In this study area, the alternatives evaluation report looked at concerns about economic factors given the remoteness of the area, wastewater service provision, circulation and lack of access to transit or bicycle routes, potential impacts to grazing land and deer herd areas, very high fire severity in this area, and potential for erosion and landslide. The 3 alternatives in the area, first of all, I want to say are based on the were based on the boundary that the Board of Supervisors directed us to use for this study area. Alternative 1 would be the current general plan, which designates the area for a mix of very low density residential, which is really impossible to make out here on this map, and agriculture, which those 2 are kind of interspersed with some blobs that are very difficult for you to see on this version of the map on the screen. The second alternative, alternative 2, would designate the entire study area for agriculture. And this is actually, I'm sorry, both alternatives 2 and 3 were the same for this study area. When the CAC talked about this on April 17th, there was some division about whether it's appropriate to limit new development because there's a perceived lack of access to this area and a high fire danger in the area. On the other hand, people did feel like they wanted to allow some additional development as an economic opportunity for residents and landowners in this area. Ultimately, 16 CAC members supported a modified version of Alternative 2 that would have retained the most of the area in agriculture, but would have kept the 30-acre retail designation from the existing general plan. 10 CAC members, a significant majority, did support Alternative 1, which would carry forward the existing general plan with very low density residential designation, some agriculture, and the existing retail would have allowed about 300 new homes. We did talk about study area 8 again on May 1st, and at that time the CAC heard from the Berry Creek Community Association. Mr. Cutler was there and presented additional information and the Berry Creek Community Plan. And so at that time, the CAC voted again, and 16 of them supported Alternative 4, which would be the area plan presented by the Berry Creek Community Association. An important component of this is that the Community Association would like to see the boundaries of the study area expanded significantly. And the allow rural residential uses, agriculture, some public uses to allow for parks and open space, as well as 20 acres of retail. And the area plan at this time does not specify locations for all of those designations. It would allow a total of about 300 new homes. The underlying designation would remain agriculture until the area plan is completed and adopted. So this shows the new boundaries of the study area as voted on by the CAC, and the hatched line indicates that this would be under an area plan. The green color underneath represents that the underlying designation would be agriculture. This is the current preferred alternative, so I'll open it up for your discussion.
Is that the area that the board reduced, or does this show the reduced area or the original proposal?
Expanded, and it was reduced, and now it's expanded.
Correct.
I think what's different, though, is something happened in between, and that was the formation of this community association. And that's what wasn't present when it came through the first time. And so the board has been very sensitive, I think, and so it seemed appropriate to at least put it back on the table as a result of the community's efforts.
And we're talking about how many acres? There's quite a few. 10,000?
That's a good question.
I don't think the total number of housing units changed, though.
50,000 acres, yeah.
Right.
It doesn't make much difference because about 98% of that is
not buildable,
uninhabitable.
Right. The number of houses would be still only 300, as it was under the previous boundary.
Have we seen the neighborhood alternative 4?
No.
No, we haven't seen any of the ratings or anything on it.
Well, wait a minute. The last meeting of the committee had supported.
They've seen it because the Citizens Advisory Committee approved this.
An alternative 4.
But there was no rating. What about all the different constraints ratings on these? This has not happened at this point. There's been no. I mean, we even looked at it as far as fire, all the different criteria that we looked at for all the other study areas, and if.
There was a rating that was given with alternative 4. We followed the exact same format that the consultants had used on the other 3 alternatives, and it scored at or better than any of the alternatives that were put forward. I am sorry, I assumed that you had been given the copy of alternative 4 in your documentation and had a chance to read it.
I'm a little concerned, particularly given what Mr. Wilson just said, that there's probably a bullseye somewhere, or there's some little spot around there somewhere where all of this development's going to occur. But meanwhile, we're looking at one large area, and there's kind of no context to it.
The purpose of the larger area was to avoid the leapfrog development that's been cited before. It would just give the community the opportunity. Most of it's going to stay timber and agricultural as it currently is. Any new areas that want to be subdivided couldn't go below the rural residential 5-acre minimum. At the moment, it can go down to.
Just the opposite. Make it leap all over the place. Because if we're going to be dealing with an area this large versus a more compact area, which was.
If that area were for all residential development, Commissioner Nelson, you'd be correct. But it's just. We recognize from a planning standpoint, it's a natural environment. The 2 arms of the feather and the lake provide natural boundaries. Water tables, water contamination, water treatment of septic systems and so forth are important to us. And so we just simply wanted to have a voice in how the entire area got developed or didn't get developed.
So what did the Citizens Advisory Committee approve, then? Just handing it over to your group and do what you want?
No. We had a specific alternative spelled out. For those areas that are appropriate for residential development, it would be rural residential 5-acre minimum. The rest of it would be in agricultural or timber.
The Berry Creek Community Association's alternative is on page 287 of the materials that you have in your book.
It says analysis of alternative.
It says study area number 8, alternative 4, submitted by the Berry Creek Community Association. And it goes through the Community Association's analysis of their alternative.
And there's a summary page at the end of it compares it to alternatives.
Right. This is their comparison and their own creation of an analysis, not DC&E's, just so we're clear.
So there's no map that says these are the areas that we think are suitable for rural residential.
Residential 5 acres wherever you can put them. That's the way.
Not wherever you can put them.
Wherever they'll go, wherever constraints will allow you to put them.
Wherever this community plan says you can put them. Here's the ratings right here, page 292.
I don't know. I guess
It's an analysis, but of what?
I guess we want to see a picture. You don't have a picture. How did CAC support an alternative when they couldn't even see a picture of what they were supporting?
Well, I think what they were supporting was a community process, a community participation process that didn't allow for any expanded number of dwelling units. And the idea was it was just more of a planning strategy that they were.
I guess I wouldn't mind allowing the community process to go, to take off and do something, but I really kind of like a picture of what they're going to.
I'm kind of uncomfortable with that. It's one thing if we say, Paradise is processing a specific plan for this piece of ground, and then we say we'll hand it over to the city of Paradise. But I think it's different to say we're going to hand over that kind of authority to what seems to be kind of an ad hoc group of residents of a huge area of the county. I mean,
we're not asking to take the authority away. We're simply asking to be able to come forward and give you our recommendations for any proposals that come to you for development in that area.
Actually, I like the concept of area plans, whether it's Cohasset, whether it's Forest Ranch, or whether it's Durham. The concept I favor, and I don't.
It simply gives us a place at the table. That's our request, is that we get to participate in the formation of our destiny. We were chartered to give you a broad stroke philosophical position or a vision, and it came down to 3 things for us. We want to retain our rural character, we want to provide for thoughtful, orderly development, and we want to balance the needs of nature with human needs. Those are the 3 things that the community, when it got together and talked about it, came forward with. And that's what our alternative was designed to do.
I would think that at this stage of the game, I could support that, because there's going to be more opportunity as we come down with constraints and the policy and the rest of it to review it. I'm not too uncomfortable.
We've kind of set up a density, and we have our concepts of what we're trying to accomplish. I guess I'm used to seeing a picture, but
so this makes sense. Then the contemplation is that, whereas as the other study areas, we're making a decision on a picture now. With respect to this area, we're holding off and waiting for the Berry Creek group to come up.
Berry Creek Urban Reserve.
Berry Creek Rural Reserve.
But with a big difference, which is that we're reserving responsibility for approving it down the road, whereas with the Urban Reserve, the contemplation is we're going to hand it over to Oroville or Paradise.
So we're going to do it.
No, it still comes through here to the Board of Supervisors. It's
kind of put a density that they'll probably work in this area, and I guess as we get something more specific, we'll get some pictures like where they're proposing their retail
and it only allows up to 300 new homes at the max, which isn't.
That's an extrapolation if the current rate of construction were to continue forward to 2030. Number of people own lots, and their plans are to retire and build in Berry Creek, and that's going to be the majority of what goes on in that area.
One way to look at this might be the agriculture designation is the underlying designation, and then it's an area plan overlay, much like you've done with an urban reserve overlay or a specific plan overlay. So this is a little different tool in the tool belt, and because we have a community association and some different circumstances.
I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah.
We'll
get Chuck a map and we'll be okay.
I'm getting used to it. If somebody wants to move this forward, we'll. Go ahead. You're get close to 4. So.
Well, all right. So it's move that the Planning Commission support the majority of the Citizens Advisory Committee supporting Alternative 4, the community plan authority reserved by the Berry Creek Community Association.
With sort of a, I guess we're talking about ag with
designation
with an overlay zone.
Ag with an area plan overlay.
A second.
Second.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second to for Area 8 to approve alternate number 4. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None.
I'm sorry, if I could just clarify, the 20 acres retail too would be preserved just like on the slide here. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I think what we're looking at is study area 8.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, wait a minute. If I'm looking at my notes correctly,
You're looking at those notes.
Well, I'm looking at the notes that the Citizens Committee on their vote had. And there was an alternative 4 that had a community plan with 300 homes. Then there was a alternative 1, but it included some retail. Now, maybe I missed something in my notes.
It does. Rural residential, agricultural, public, 20 acres of retail distributed along Baldwin Road.
Is that the alternative 4 that they ended up with?
16 support alternative 4 area plan presented by the Berry Creek Community Association.
With 20 acres of retail.
It'll never happen.
Already voted for it, though.
So
But when he said that, it changed.
just wanted to make sure that was 5-0?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, excuse me. Okay. We are moving on to the study areas that are adjoining the city of Oroville now. The first one is study area 21, the Thermalito area. In this study area, the alternatives evaluation report highlighted some concerns about market viability and jobs housing balance, as well as school capacity. There was also concerns about recharge potential, impacts to recharge potential in this area, and impacts to farmland, as well as flooding issues and sensitivity for cultural resources. Alternative 1 is, excuse me, get to the right page here so I can make sure I'm telling you the right information. Alternative 1 would be the closest to the city of Oroville's, to the existing Butte County general plan, which is similar to the city of Oroville's general plan in this area. This would allow most of the area to be medium density residential, with some of the darker brown that you see as medium high density residential, retail and retail along Grand and Oro Dam there, and public is the light blue area that you see. Under alternative 2, there was kind of a slight increase in the amount of retail along 162. Both alternative 1 and alternative 2 would have allowed about 7,000 new units. And then alternative 3 targets subdivision activity to more specifically to certain parcels. So you can see that the brown is not all the way across the area, but in certain parts of the area. So this would have allowed a mixture of medium density residential, rural residential, and low density residential, and it did retain the retail uses along 162. So this would allow about 1,500 new units as opposed to the 7,000 new units allowed under the 2 other alternatives. The CAC discussed this area on April 17th, and many of them felt that it would be a good place for additional development since it is so close to the city of Oroville's existing urbanized area and existing urban services. We did also discuss, we had a similar discussion as to the one Craig gave today about annexation. I want to mention that Eric Titleman, the Community Development Director for Oroville, was at this CAC meeting and was able to present some statements on the city's positions about the three alternatives. In general, the 23 of the CAC members supported the idea of utilizing the City of Oroville General Plan, which, as I mentioned, is similar to Alternative 1 and 2, since those two alternatives were both pretty similar to each other. Majority of the area would be in the medium density residential. There would be some mixed use along Oro Dam Boulevard, and this would allow up to 11,600 new homes here. There was a small minority that preferred Alternative 3, which would have called for significantly less residential development, only to 1,500 new homes. The support of the City of Oroville's general plan, which did include a mixed-use designation, it just brings us to the first time in our discussion today to the issue of the city's mixed-use designation. We're going to see this in a couple of other of the Oroville study areas. It was not a designation that we had considered as part of the original mix of the three alternatives for the unincorporated county, but it is a designation that the city uses. And when the city talks about a mixed-use designation, they would allow both residential and commercial uses. Residential uses would be high-density residential, which in their general plan is 10 to 30 units per acre, and up to a 0.8 FAR for commercial uses. It's important to note that in the city's mixed-use designation, which they mostly use along commercial corridors, they would allow single-use commercial development. Not every project within a mixed-use designation area has to be a mixed-use project. So this is the current preferred land use alternative as supported by the CAC, and again, it's substantially based on the City of Oroville General Plan. The mixed use that we were talking about is this kind of orange area here along Oro Dam. 162. And the remainder is medium density residential. So that's up for you to discuss.
Well, I think I don't have a problem with it, but I'm going to ask a question. It sort of goes general throughout all this, and when we're calculating numbers, not dwelling units so much, but when we get to population and housing, all that stuff, are we factoring in the second dwelling units?
The numbers are based on vacant and underutilized parcels. So if someone has a parcel now that they have one home on and they could build a second unit on that parcel, that second unit is counted in this 11,600 number in this, for example.
It is, to answer your question.
So it's calculated as...
It's factored in.
So we got a lot more.
Well, that's where you want them.
No, she's not saying it.
No, population and units don't.
Having grew up in Thermalito and watching how slowly it has grown, I can't see it developing in the next 20 years.
I think it's an area that should develop, but
yeah,
I think it needs to develop with the infrastructure and the things that we've talked about before.
I think it will.
Yeah. And that's what it would, under the city, it would have that opportunity. So I don't have a problem with
it. I don't have anything to add to this Citizens Advisory Committee's recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to recommend the City of Oroville's mixed-use designation for Area 21. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
Okay, study area 23. Before Berry Creek was enlarged, this was our largest study area at about 10,000, just over 10,000 acres, and it's very complex, including existing urbanized areas and also down to farmland, as we heard from some of the property owners already here today. The alternatives evaluation report discussed potential impacts to recharge potential, habitat, fire severity, as well as geologic hazards and potential impacts to cultural resources. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge that there was a major oversight in the alternatives evaluation report's analysis of this area in leaving out the analysis of agricultural lands. We did correct this in the errata submitted to the CAC at their April 17th meeting, and it's also a memo that you received at your last meeting on May 9th. The alternatives evaluation report should have recognized that that this area includes 65 acres of farmland of statewide importance, 880 acres of unique farmland, and 1,465 acres of grazing land. And this would have significantly changed the grades for all of the alternatives to a D for their impacts to agricultural resources. The three alternatives in this study area, again, they're a bit complex just because of the size and complexity of the study area. The alternative one is based on the City of Oroville's general plan, and it has a mix of residential designations in the outer areas, more medium density residential in the areas closer to Oroville. The red here is retail, and then a resource conservation area. All of this in the outline areas is rural residential. Under alternative 2, it's a kind of a similar structure, but basically residential densities were kind of downgraded across the board from what was shown in alternative 1. So this has residential in basically the same locations, but the lower density rural residential development takes up much more of the eastern part of the study area. And even the closer in areas are designated for low density and very low instead of medium, but we did retain the retail uses along the commercial corridor. And then alternative 3 is kind of a middle ground between those two. Alternative 1, that had the most intense development, would have allowed approximately 18,400 new units. Alternative 2, with less development across the board, would have allowed a total of about 2,600 new units. And alternative 3 would be in between these two, allowing about 5,900 new units. So the CAC discussed this for the first time on April 17th. They were generally supportive of the City of Oroville's plans for this area. However, as we've talked about, many of them felt that it would be a good idea to emphasize retail development and potentially add mixed uses along Miners Ranch Road to take advantage of traffic to Lake Oroville and to a potential future Stringtown Mountain Resort. There was some disagreement about this, but ultimately 15 members did support the alternative based on the existing City of Oroville general plan modified to add additional retail uses along Miners Ranch Road. And this would support up to about 17,000 new homes. Then a significant minority, 9, supported the City of Oroville general plan as it is without the change to intensify retail along Miners Ranch Road. There was some support for alternatives 2 and 3 that would have allowed significantly less residential development. And we did also, there was substantial public comment at the May 1st meeting about the agricultural uses in this area. The CAC did discuss this study area 23 again at their May 1st meeting. At that time, the CAC member discussion concluded that their preferred alternative as it stands supports rural character in the eastern portion of the study area, and they decided not to re-vote on the area and to let their original decision stand. So this is the current preferred alternative, and again, it is basically following the City of Oroville general plan with the change of the additional retail and mixed use along Miners Ranch.
I have a question. Where, we've heard a lot of testimony from people that have small farms. Where are those located in Area 23?
I'd be happy for any of the landowners to come up. They're generally in this area, but if anybody wants to point to a specific location, they're welcome to.
Yeah, I think one letter said it was only 1% of the area.
Could come up and point out this? Is it if it's where we think? We just need to make sure we know where we think it is. This area where all these wineries and where this whole rural area that you're talking about.
I can show you in general. There was a map provided with the April 17th errata, which I was assured was available to folks. Basically, they're scattered in a couple of areas, generally right in here, and a couple up here that are largely the orange groves. There's some grazing land that exists up here and down in the southern portions. But that's primarily it. There's grazing land, largely the unique farmlands here and a bit here, some grazing lands out to the east. And they're surrounded by a sea of rural residential in this plan. It's 59% unique farmland, a fraction of a percent statewide importance, land of statewide importance, and perhaps 10% or so grazing land of this entire state. So I'm sorry, I don't have that map here. It's on my computer, but perhaps
Let me look and see.
it's on the website too. Yeah. It's a bunch of little red patches right in here. You get right down to it, a couple of pale yellow patches for the state grazing land.
Generally speaking, this is about the intersection of Mount Ida and Miners Ranch. And it's really faint on any of the maps that you print out. This is generally Mount Ida kind of does this.
Yeah, and it comes in, it makes its big S bend and comes in right about there.
And most of the ranches are small farms just cutting this general.
And Circle Drive, and this is the Orvanger Highway. This is Oakville, and that's Mount Idaho. You'll find it there at home.
Okay, I think I have the map.
This is generally the map in a more building.
Got the idea.
Kind of see where I pointed out some of the road designations. Yeah, at Miners Ranch, you can kind of see some of the intersections.
Is that it? No, it doesn't show the farmland. This one shows the farmland. Big farmland.
Joanna,
Yes.
basically,
Actually, there's small farms scattered all in
That's
there.
what I see. It's not a concise area.
No, it's scattered all in there.
You've heard different comments on
Said he
that.
sketched these.
Some people have asked for alternative one, but with agricultural land to be designated.
Well, here I've got the map. It's in
People have asked for alternative
that
one.
one. But what it shows is widely scattered really all over that section 23, concentrated mostly in the south and southeast.
Scott.
If the exhibit that I handed out, if you look on the back side of it, this is a cutout of the city's general plan and you can it's in a lot more detail. You can see a lot more of the parcelization, and you can see where their sphere of influence is now and where they're shrinking it to. And you can see I pointed some of that stuff out. So it gives you a better parcelization view of how that area looks.
It still doesn't show where the farm areas of
Well, maybe you guys could take a look.
unique farmland, prime farmland, farmland of statewide importance is.
Well, you take Foothill Boulevard, there's little farms all along the side of that, all the way around, even when it runs into Miners Ranch. There's a lot of little olive orchards and little citrus.
Yeah.
There's a map in your alternatives evaluation report that does show the grazing land. Oh, that's the map. That's the map.
This is the one that shows. Yeah,
that shows the grazing land and the farmland of statewide importance and unique farmland.
Right, got it.
So the city is shrinking back its sphere of influence. Is that correct?
That's what they're considering right now. That's not been...
It hasn't been done?
No,
okay.
But it's being evaluated.
And is their alternative to... explain their alternative to me again.
Their alternative includes medium-density residential in those areas that are closest to the existing. This white bit here is the city of Oroville city limits. So this brown you can see closest to the city limits. That's medium-density residential. And then we have a low-density residential, very low-density residential, and rural residential as you move farther away from town. There is retail, and it's a bit difficult to distinguish, again, on the projector, but there's a slightly darker shade here. This is the mixed use designation. This is retail, and here is the resource conservation in the Wyman Ravine area. And then, again, where we are, the current preferred land use alternative deviates from the city's general plan is with this mixed use corridor
the big
along
brown
Wyman's Ramp.
spot right there in the middle, that's a Gold Country Casino. Right up in there. Right, yeah, to your left, the hair. That one. Is that the casino's property in
That's
Gold
correct.
Country, and that's their property?
Yes,
All
it
right.
is.
Gold Country?
Yeah.
I mean, Gold, yeah.
Gold Country Casino's right there, yes.
All right, so it looks like most of these farmlands are in an area that's designated rural residential under both the current zoning and the Oroville proposed general plan, except for a few right along Foothill.
So then, Feather Falls Casino is the brown blob way down, no, further down, I think, way down. Right there, I think that one's it. That's Feather Falls Casino there, then. That would be on Wyandotte. All right.
What is the concept again behind the mixed use and the lower on the east side?
The CAC suggested that this, we had it alluded to by one of the commenters, this area in the Oroville General Plan is seen as a bypass to get people from 70 to Lake Oroville. And as the CAC was also supportive of additional development in the Stringtown Mountain specific plan area, they felt that that would be another thing bringing additional traffic along this route. And so that would make it a good place for increased commercial development.
Which there is none there right now.
That's one that kind of bothers me. I don't know.
What's wrong with alternative two?
That's an awful big chunk of land for designated.
The concept behind the resource conservation, what's in it Wyman Ravine that made it a big green spot? Do you know? Concept behind what is the resource conservation piece? What was that? What is that?
It's my understanding that's the bottom part of Wyman Ravine.
Oh, just okay, got it. Okay.
That's basically where all of the dredger tailings are in there. Mining operations.
There's mining operations that have occurred in that area, yes.
For the whole thing, just about.
Yes, just about.
So it's a big mine, is basically what it is.
Yeah, it's just mounds of rocks.
Okay. Okay.
It'd be a good spot to flatten out, really.
Okay, so just from my understanding over here, how many folks, can I see a show of hands, how many folks are here for Area 23? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Now, of you folks here, my understanding, how many are for alternative 1? I just want to get an idea, because that's, I'm getting mixed signals. And how about alternative 2? Hands? None? And or 3?
I think what they're saying is they haven't seen an alternative that represents what they would like yet.
Okay. Was that number 4?
That alternative isn't one that's been discussed by the CAC. If I understand it correctly, the people who spoke earlier today were in support of modifying this alternative so that instead of being designated AR or rural residential, parcels that are in current ag use or that are identified as by the state as grazing land, farmland of statewide importance, unique farmland, would be designated for agriculture. So those would be light green on this map instead of the white rural residential. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the inadvertent oversight led
the alternatives to that component. Probably need you on tapes. I don't know whether anybody...
It was that oversight that left these entirely out of the discussion. And they would fall right within what is now rural residential. And what we would desire is that they be explicitly delineated and called agricultural lands, which is what they are, and they would then form a new layer in the blank spot, so to speak, on that map, and would be the addition to the map that properly represents the agricultural resource that's there. And they weren't delineated on anything because they came into the discussion very, very late. So it's this alternative with the ag lands made visible, basically.
Zoned as ag instead of rural residential.
Correct. And it would follow the delineation of the three categories that she just spoke to: unique farmland, farmland of statewide importance, and grazing land.
Well, but there really isn't a delineation. There's a little isolated pockets all through the southeastern section of that study area. So what we would have to do, I think, is to take all that rural residential area and zone it ag, or leave it rural residential.
It has been delineated, though, by the state.
Unique ag land.
What is it?
Well, I know, but
5 acres right now in there?
If you make it ag, minimum would be 5 acres, and that sounds like what they want.
that's what. Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah. Existing general plan is rural residential today.
But you don't want to.
But if we made it ag,
I mean, we can't take every little parcel that's been designated prime farmland and say that's going to be ag, and then surrounded by rural residential.
right.
That's what I'm thinking. It's really, we could if there were just one or two little areas, but they're sort of sprinkled all through there. So we should be thinking about what's the consequence of zoning that area ag. I mean,
all of the white area?
Yeah. I mean, you'd have a larger minimum parcel size. Every new subdivision would require an ag buffer.
You wouldn't have the density.
You'd really, but the other side is you'd really be corrupting your ag zoning designation, because the concept of ag zoning is big commercial spreads, and this is an area that's already kind of, ranchettes, dare I say.
Wineries are
some kind of an overlay zone to deal with
I'd
it.
say there's more 5 acre plus parcels there than anything.
See if we can get some more input from Scott.
Just that you guys are hitting on it, Commissioner Leland, you're hitting right on target. You would have a huge amount of non-conforming use with setbacks. It would all be, if you designated it as ag, blanket. That's why myself and the folks I represent, we would like to keep the zoning as it is, which is ag residential.
Rural residential.
And rural residential. Well, there is.
If you start developing that with residential, you're going to start conflicting with the ag, and then, so we got to decide, what do you want,
But
I think so. Yeah.
It warrants looking at the existing parcel sizes as it is now.
Poster for leaving it the way it is.
That general plan the way it is, and that's consistent with the existing general plan. Of course, it's most consistent with what the city's preferred alternative is, and most people I talk to, they would like to keep their property rights as they are.
Existing designation, rural ag?
Yeah, rural residential, yes.
Minimum parcel size what?
What minimum parcel size?
It varies. There's 5s, there's 2.5s.
But the
I represent some property that they are 2.5.
Rural residential is what?
It varies from about 2.5 to 5 acres through that area. Plus. Well, the existing parcels are larger. The designations for those properties out there really don't. There's no designations that are larger than about 5 acres.
So what we need here is maybe some wordsmithing to try and come up with a hybrid of, the 3 alternatives and what the property owners who are farming out there are wanting.
I'm not sure that actually is what you've heard today. I think that what you've heard is some of the property owners out there who have existing agricultural operations, albeit on fairly small parcels, are seeking to have those properties that are specifically on the map that Commissioner Leland was talking about, designated with some type of agricultural use. I think that if your commission chose to go there, you might want to consider something different than the agriculture designation that is applied to valley farmlands or the grazing and open lands designation that we utilize in the foothills, because this really is a unique situation that you have very small truck type farms, commercial ag, in terms of vineyards and really none of these properties by themselves are viable exclusively as ag. They subsist either as part of larger units or through the combination of other uses such as ag tourism, weddings, things like that are part of the overall operation.
But you're trying to encourage that in ag zones, aren't you? So what's wrong with
I'm not saying that. I'm just getting back to Commissioner
don't mean
Leland's
you
comments.
planning.
I'm talking about Commissioner Leland's comments about the concerns that if you use the existing agricultural designations and policies, that you'll run into issues with agricultural buffers that you really can't accommodate, for example, on a 5-acre parcel.
How did we deal with them when we were dealing with the vineyards? Or did we just call them? Remember when we started dealing with the vineyards? I'm just trying to figure out how we dealt with them. Craig, how did we deal with them back then?
Well, I think what the county currently has is general plan designation is agricultural residential.
Is that how we dealt with the vineyards?
And that was a designation that came out of the previous general plan that allowed those agricultural uses and then allowed a broad range of minimum parcel sizes. It seems like the solution is to maintain an agricultural residential general plan type of designation, which still allows the agricultural uses without necessarily the buffer requirements.
Well, can we put some kind of an overlay zone over that to recognize what's there, the ag tourism concept, and possibly you can play with the buffer sizes as well as...
Well, then the zoning would allow you to maintain a 5-acre minimum, and the county has a number of zones that, the AR5, FR, Foothill, Recreation 5, and then within those zoning districts, they allow for wineries. They allow for those other kind of specialty ag-related uses. But I think what you're trying to get to is a larger minimum parcel size. Like Nina mentioned, with the ag designation, you can only go down to a A5 zoning. But you can achieve basically the same thing with the agricultural residential designations and maintaining a minimum 5-acre zoning or whatever you think is appropriate, larger lots.
I don't see where the buffer would be necessarily be a problem, because the setback comes when you build a house to stay so many feet away from the ag parcel, and the winery or whatever is the ag parcel, so I don't see that as being a problem if it was designated ag.
What's the adjacent properties that bear the brunt of the buffer?
Right, and if they're larger parcels, it's
right.
Not...
Sometimes with 5 acres, it's a little bit difficult to meet
minimum.
That. Yeah, 300 foot. So,
I would like to kind of pitch another approach here for a second, if I could. The idea of some sort of in my head, I'm thinking of like specialty ag, some other ag type designation that doesn't necessarily invoke all the ag policies and recognizes an area. I've heard this area referred to as a banana belt. There's something going on there with specialty agriculture that maybe our plan should recognize.
And I think it's important, if they still want to maintain their rural designation. I like the ag zone because you don't get the extra unit on a parcel. You don't build that density out there where it may not be as compatible with the surrounding uses. So that's why I'm hanging in for the ag designation. I think it provides more of what they're asking for.
I think that could certainly be included in some type of specialty ag designation. There's no reason why that would necessarily allow the second units. Strawberries are an excellent example of where through intensive agricultural practices you can have agriculture on a fairly small parcel of property.
It looks like we're going to see more of this in the way things may seem to be heading with our society as our food gets closer to us. So just
I think one of the challenges we have, Tim, is that we have a very large area and it's very condensed in the map. I think we need to get a more magnified map, 24 by whatever, 2 feet by 3 feet or something, and maybe that would help us, delineate exactly what properties we're talking about and what we want to do. Because when I look at this map, even with my glasses, and some of those properties that they're being developed, it's to such a scale that they're just dots. They're just little brown dots that
Well, I think what we need is the concept that you're thinking of for this area. We're at a general plan level, so we don't need to get so much to the parcel level. So we need the concept that works from your perspective for this area.
I think this might be an area where we do need a special zone. You hate to do that because that's sort of an easy way out, but this is one of those combination use areas where you've got something that you want to accommodate and encourage, but it potentially conflicts with the residential. So
we have another challenge here. If the sphere is moving, and if the sphere is moving in, then that has an impact on ag policies as well. So you would need to think about that as we'll just pay attention to that as that goes on its process. The sphere is moving in. Typically, the spheres move out.
Yeah, and the change would move to the county side. A lot of these, the biggest chunk of these unique farmlands.
Right. This was the area where we had Williamson Act land inside of the sphere of influence. You remember where that shouldn't happen. We should have.
This is one of the areas that had that? Or
yes, has it currently.
Pulling the sphere in would help then, wouldn't it?
The mixed-use part is the only part that kind of bothers me. I just don't see why we need it. I don't
see why we need one that big.
If we had maybe a little one, but something that big is just, to me, is just, I just don't see why we need that much.
That's in the area. It looks like that if the Oroville retracts their sphere of influence, it would leave behind that area. But yeah, I mean, I don't see why. It's just an isolated area. I think if things change and there is a big traffic corridor through there, then we can talk about it. But I wouldn't plan for it now. I don't see things going that way based on anything we're proposing. Okay, so let's just think. We're thinking of, I guess, generally approving the Oroville General Plan, except maybe deleting the mixed use along Miners Ranch Road. Or no, conforming to the general plan as far as the mixed use.
Preferred alternative with the exception of.
Oh yeah, preferred alternative except for the mixed use on Miners Ranch Road. It will look into a specialized ag tourism zone for the rural parts of this study area.
You're recognizing the unique state lands of importance or whatever it's called.
I'm sorry, are you saying that you would want us would you want to see this map with a different color on it, or are you asking for further investigation, or are you asking, can you clarify what you mean by look into a specialty ag designation or a different designation?
All of the above.
Yeah, I think we need to explore that ourselves, and we could bring something back to the commission.
This would be a new.
We wouldn't have a final direction from the commission on that.
No, it'd really be just a placeholder, recognizing that we need something different than either the rural residential designation or the commercial ag designation.
Right, to address the unique farm issues in this area.
And if I could just say, Chairman Wilson was hitting on it with regards to the south western portion of that in the resource conservation area. There hasn't been a whole lot of discussion about it, but if that can be in your consideration for the existing project that's pending, as well as the Moss property. Haven't had a whole lot of discussion about it. I disagree with that whole resource conservation on that blanket area, but most of that area is the tribe's land. There's 150, 200 acres of that's private. 100 of it, which I represent, are a little more.
How much land does the tribe own in there?
Well, the Robinsons own lots of property, and they own most of the old Robinson Ranch. But specifically, as you can see on the map, there's two little nodes that you can see on the map that I presented you. One of which is a pending project. And then the Moss property fronts on Lower Wyandotte Road. It's currently zoned R1. We'd like to leave it that. We see a future project there across the street from the school, butted up to current urban.
So I don't see any problem with that because it's built right there anyway. It's developed fully, curb gutters and the whole bit.
Exactly.
So was the concept of putting the line for resource conservation just to follow Wyman or Ravine? Was that the concept, or was there?
It's based on the city's general plan. I understand it's following parcel lines.
Yeah, the city's general plan's a little bit confusing. One of the properties, the Moss property, is in their general plan is represented as resource conservation. The Versus Place project is not.
Can you explore that as far as that? I mean, I think there was an intent here of drawing that line probably around the mine. Wouldn't you say that?
The mined property, probably, yes. But part of it isn't. I know that the two upper left-hand corners of it has not been mined.
You can see the urbanization right there in that blocked out piece. That would have, if that wasn't current urban, you would have probably seen that to be more contiguous and butted up to Lower Wyandotte Road, and it would have been more uniform. You can see the urban area blocked out of it. Well, the property adjacent to it, both to the east and to the south, is prime urban land with current projects pending.
Due south is the Nissen property, and the other would be due east of the blocked out property there. Then what?
That's exactly right. More or less, yeah. The Nissen property butts up to the Moss property, which is all currently R1 stuff. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Well, a lot of things are coming at us here, so I'm not sure that you're ready to make
is that if that was a line that was drawn naturally because of a mine that is still operating or something, then maybe
it's not.
Well, the gold could still be there.
It's just old tailings is mostly what it is in there.
There could still be some gold in there.
I'm sure there is.
Well, let me propose that the Planning Commission endorse the Citizen Advisory Committee's preferred alternative, with the exception that we'll delete the mixed use along Miners Ranch Road and explore a special zoning or general plan designation to reflect the unique ag and residential characteristics of the southeast portion of the study area.
Specialty ag?
Something ag tourism, but what you have to do is you have to look at the two designations, it seems to me, and sort of think about what you need to change from one or the other to accommodate both the ag operations that are there, and sort of small scale ag operations, and still accommodate the residential that's out there as well.
So, get rid of mixed use too on the east side.
Yeah, I think I said we'll eliminate the mixed use. So those are the two changes from the CAC's preferred alternative: eliminate the mixed use on Miners Ranch Road, and sort of keep a place mark for a special land use designation for the ag areas.
Would your motion include any direction on the resource conservation area?
I would like to see it shrunk. Yeah. At least up there next to the development that's already completed.
For the Moss landing in Ross.
I'd like to see it shrunk away from that.
Okay.
Kind of makes logical.
Then I could see the rest of it staying in there then.
Okay.
Modify the motion to include that, and I'll second.
Yeah, that's in there. So we'll change the Research Conservation District to exclude the developed areas. So that's my motion.
And we have a second.
No, that's not resource conservation.
You understand all that? Because I can't repeat it.
Goes on.
It's rural residential.
Do we have a problem?
Well, I'm just trying
to clarify the Versus Place property, which is located adjacent to Lower Wyandotte. And
so that's not, I just need a clarification from Scott. Is that in this resource conservation or not?
Yeah, I believe that's outside the resource conservation designation, and the preferred alternative, it's designated as rural residential.
Is it in the resource conservation as it stands or not?
It is on that map, yes.
Okay, so it needs to come out.
It needs to come out, yeah.
And the question was that in your motion or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
We have a motion. for study area 23 to approve the modified alternative. Is that good enough?
You're approving your modifications to the CAC's modified alternative one.
Yes.
That's what we're doing.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carried. Now we're up to what, 24?
Yes.
You said it was. No, it's not.
Okay, study area 24. Then this area, the alternatives evaluation report highlighted concerns about jobs, housing balance, adequate fire service, access to bicycle and transit facilities, impacts to deer herd areas, high fire severity, potential geologic hazards, and high sensitivity for cultural resources. There are 3 alternatives in this area. Alternative 1, let me say very clearly about all 3 of these alternatives that all 3 of them do include the Stringtown Mountain specific plan. Alternative 1 would be the existing general plan. It includes the Stringtown Mountain specific plan area in the central area here, but then also the remainder of the study area would be designated for very low density residential and resource conservation. This would allow a total of about 1,000 new units. Oh, and then there's also some retail here. Under alternative 2, again, it does include the Stringtown Mountain specific plan. It is different from alternative 1 by excluding the very low density residential development and designating the remainder of the area for resource conservation. And then under alternative 3, we would have the Stringtown Mountain specific plan, and the remainder of the study area would be designated for clustered low-density residential development and resource conservation. This would have allowed 1,800 new units. The CAC discussed this on April 17th. And during that discussion, they were presented with an alternative 4 by the landowner. Alternative 4 would have been most similar to alternative 3, but instead of allowing 1,800 new units, this new alternative 4 would allow up to 2,700 new units. The CAC was basically supportive of additional development in this area. They felt that the leisure and recreation industry is a growing industry in the county and wanted to support that, and felt that this is an area that can be served by LOA PUD and therefore would be appropriate for some additional development. The final vote was 25 in support of the alternative 4, which would also, in addition to the Stringtown Mountain area specific plan, would have very low, medium, and medium high density residential, the small retail area that you saw, and up to 2,700 new homes. And this is the map.
How does that proposed alternative that the committee supported compare with the plan that was approved?
It includes the plan that was approved and allows additional development beyond that.
It included a resort. It included, all that's adding is a little bit of commercial development down at the...
No, the commercial development would be part of the resort. What it's adding is additional residential development out here. This is the plan that was approved, and this is including the retail area. So this added units out here.
That's an additional 2,700?
It's a total of 2,700.
With the...
Including the resort.
So all 3 plans are the same number of units. Why am I... Oh, that's acre. I'm looking at acres here.
2,700. It's 1 per acre.
Okay.
Total units.
So, I don't know. This one, it's been there for 15 years. Nothing's happened.
Well,
nobody's broken ground on anything, and now we're asking to expand it. I mean, I just...
Well, yeah, but that happens a lot in a lot of these projects. You know, boom, suddenly we're approving 58,000 dwelling units. They ain't going to all develop in this century.
I just have problems expanding it.
Yeah.
Well, one thing is that many a times we approve a project, or a planning commission in any given city approves a project, but the developer goes back there and he bounces this idea off of investors. It doesn't it doesn't pan out. In other words, they say it doesn't pencil out, and they come back and they look at it again at a later time and say, you know what, we needed more units in there, or it's not going to fly. And that's how these things come about.
What happened 15 years ago?
So where's the golf course going?
And it didn't get off the ground. But if they think that they can do something with alternative for, remember, what we're expanding, Chuck, is just a dream that they have to develop something.
You never want to go backwards when you draw that line. Remember, you don't want to go backwards.
But it's not a guarantee, that they can do it, because they have so many loopholes to go through and expenses. But sometimes by the time they get to the realization that it's not financially feasible.
How many units in the plan that was approved?
I believe that was 1,000.
800, I thought you said.
We have the existing
Stringtown
approved plan.
It's 900, 900.
Well, those are various alternatives, but what was in the plan that we approved?
I'm basing that on my...
You're right, it is 1,000.
Yeah.
1,000, okay. Why the need to expand it? I mean, you've got that project, you've got some commercial maybe needs to be added if it wasn't a part of it, and the resort. Why do we need to over 2,700 total as opposed to 1,000? Why do we need another 1,700 in that area?
Well, if you wanted to do it, you'd do it because in the belief, first of all, you conclude that you want to encourage development in that area and that kind of development. And all we're looking at this time is that they're going to something resort-like.
At one dwelling unit per acre average. Not necessarily built that way because they're clustered. There's other specific planned projects.
There's no open area that I can see on the whole thing then, is there?
Right. I believe the proponent would say that this yellow area will be clustered residential, and so whatever is not in residential would remain in open space. But similar to Berry Creek, there's not a mapped version of where that would remain.
It said we're at low density throughout the rest of it.
I mean, residential would be allowed where appropriate throughout, but it would not be. It would be, as Nina said, Commissioner Lambert said, excuse me, an average of 1 density per acre, but not at a minimum of 1 acre parcel size. They would be clustered. I believe 3 to 6 dwelling units.
I think what you've heard today from the applicants is that they're looking at really more of a planned development concept. If this were adjacent to a city, you might be looking at some kind of a specific plan designation. What we've heard discussed today would be a specific cluster development, as has been said by Joanna, but it would be within the context of some kind of additional planning effort of all the property owners out there. So it would be some type of combination of the existing Stringtown mountain area and the development of the adjacent lands.
What about the City of Oroville's concern that allowing development here is going to overtax 162 between there and the town? So it was imposing a cost on the City of Oroville. My first thought is, well, if we ever approve it, we'd mitigate all the impacts, and that would have to be one of the impacts. Is that true, even though it would be a different jurisdiction?
Yes. The impacts to the downstream traffic, as it were, would all have to be addressed through any kind of approach. And I think that, that we're looking at, general things, but the city's concern is valid that the existing transportation infrastructure is probably not going to handle it. You also heard some discussion today that the city's preferred alternative does not include essentially a bypass route, a second route to get up towards the Lake Oroville area. So I believe that the city's concern is at least partly based on the additional traffic to their existing traffic infrastructure, as opposed to if there were some kind of a bypass eventually built.
That would all be studied, though, because we heard the other kind of perspective that you're going to create more of an area that is full services, so you're not going to have people from Berry Creek in this area needing to go down to Oroville like they currently do for services. So it's just it's a matter of perspective of what the vision is for this future area.
So to me, it looks to me like the vision is to where that whole thing can be developed everywhere with the cross-hatching in there.
I think maybe, and maybe Joanna can go into this a little more, I think the cross-hatching was really meant to say that, we don't really have all the information at this point. We don't have a map, just like with Berry Creek. We don't have the specific concept. We want to let you know that within that cross-hatched area, certain things may occur, but we don't know exactly what the placement of that is. It's not going to all be developed at 1 acre parcels there. That's not the type of development that's been proposed by any of the property owners out there.
No, I understand that, but what I'm looking at there is it means that they can do something with it.
That's correct. It could be there's nothing that's
no
being
open space left anywhere. They could use every bit of that they wanted to there.
Well, I think that we also know the topography of the area, and the way that it's going to be very expensive for services.
I've hiked most of it.
Right, you're going to have clustering. So
Yeah, I mean, I think the pitch is that they're going to try and do something that requires a large chunk of land under a unified ownership or control anyway. And if they get a certain critical mass, then they can afford to have their own sewer treatment plant there. They can have a golf course. They can justify paying a golf course. This is the different situation from Tuscan Ridge, because here you do want houses to pay for a golf course.
It's not all under one ownership at all, though.
I mean unified management. There's one big guy, Taylor, I guess, that's driving or pushing these things, and there's others that are affiliated in some loose way we're not aware of. But by expanding the boundaries, they're looking for, generalized permission to develop this big area, because the pitch is they need that to do the kind of development that they want, the resort kind of development.
I could buy that.
It's an area that's close to the lake. It's close to Oroville. It has to be big, but it's far enough away that it has to be big enough to have its own, probably sewer treatment plant and water wells.
This is where it would be nice if we knew the constraints that are there
I know that they've won their battle with
I know
the
you
state
have them some.
using the line that goes into Loafer Creek, so.
And the alternatives evaluation report regarding the constraints. Alternative 3, which was the most similar to this area, some of the constraints that the alternatives evaluation report identified were jobs housing balance, because this would have lots of housing and few jobs. Concerns about fire and emergency services and school capacity, bicycle and transit facilities given the distance from existing areas, deer herd habitat, fire severity, and erosion and expansive soils, and then high sensitivity for cultural resources. Those are some of the constraints that we identified in the alternatives evaluation report.
This does have a lot of C's and D's.
Okay. I can support it.
Chair Wilson, just a heads up, we're running out of videotape, so we're going to need a break in a couple minutes.
Make a motion.
Yeah, I think I'm for it too, just as a real impetus to this kind of tourist development in an appropriate area. So let me move that the Planning Commission support the recommendation of the Citizens Advisory Committee with respect to Study Area 24.
Alternative number 4.
Alternative 4.
Which is the landowner's alternative number 4.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second to support CAC's recommendation of alternative number 4 for Area 24. All those in favor say aye.
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 I'm going to vote no on this one. leapfrog development. No, I can't support this one. It has nothing.
4-1.
It really doesn't have anything to do with that. It has to do more with. I just think it's too big. Anyway.
I can support it.
The vote's taken. We've seen no progress, and so anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why we're here. We vote.
So what do we need? 5 minutes for him to change tape? Okay.